Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. It's springtime, our thoughts turn to the flowers and the fields, and we have as our guest today Jeff Witte, the Cabinet Secretary for the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, but also the Director for the New Mexico Department of Agriculture. Tell us why you have these hats to wear.
Hi, Lorene. Thank you. In New Mexico, the Department of Agriculture is a constitutional agency organized under the Board of Regents of New Mexico State University. And our founding fathers in the original constitution of the state actually put it that way when they started writing it in 1910. And, as we all know, it was adopted in 1912, and they left it alone, and it's been that way ever since. They put it there so that the Department of Agriculture could work close with the College of Agriculture and the research, extension, and teaching fields. And it's great. We don't have to duplicate services. I can use the College of Agriculture when I need them. They use us. We use the policy. We share the policy arena. We use their science-based research for our policy decisions. It really works out well.
And how long have you been there, and in which capacities?
Well, I started with the department in 1994, so I've been there 23 years. I came in as the deputy director, assistant director of the department, and 6 years ago, I've been as the director secretary for 6 years now.
Good. So can you explain to us, in terms of the average citizen, what effect your work has? What does the New Mexico Department of Agriculture do that affects our lives?
We're one agency that touches every citizen in the state of New Mexico basically every day. Whether you're filling up your car with fuel at the gas stations, you'll see our certification stickers that we've checked the gas pumps for accuracy and that you're actually getting what you pay for. The other side of that equation is the station's actually selling and not giving away gas. We balance that equation. We're a consumer protection agency, and the consumers in our eyes are both the gas station owner and the consumer. We also, through our weights and measures program, we're in all the grocery stores. We're checking packages. Through our dairy division, we're on every dairy, checking milk quality and sanitation of the dairies. We're also, we do a lot of marketing. We do domestic marketing in the United States, but we also have a pretty robust international marketing program. In fact, our theme for the Rotunda Dinner and AgFest this year was local to global. A lot of folks don't realize we sell our products in over 40 countries around the world. And you think about New Mexico agriculture, we really reach out and touch folks. We also regulate pesticides, feed seed fertilizer, nursery products for pest diseases. We're in the middle of a pecan quarantine down in the south.
Yes, weevil.
Pecan weevil, so we can talk about that in a little bit. We have ag programs where we work with the soil and water conservation districts. We work with the acequias. We're pretty broad in what we touch.
So what is the effect of agriculture in New Mexico's economy?
Agriculture, and one I don't want to leave out because it's a very important part, is our veterinary diagnostic lab in Albuquerque. Very new, modern, and it's co-located with the Scientific Lab Division of the Department of Health, as well as Office of Medical Investigator. And it's a unique setup across the nation in that those three scientific-based entities can actually get together and cooperate on any zoonotic disease outbreak that might happen, so it's really a nice setup. Economy of New Mexico, agriculture is huge. $3 to $4 billion a year in farm gate sales, depending on the drought and other factors. But when you multiply that with the impact on the state's economy, New Mexico State University did a study in 2012 that showed we were about $12 billion of economic impact in the state.
Wow, that would pay for the budget twice over.
That would take care of a few things. And the unique thing about New Mexico is we are a very good production state. We're just now in the infancy of value added. And in fact, that same study that New Mexico State University did, it highlighted that we export 97% of what we produce to another state or into Mexico for further value added processing. And if we just kept 15% of that at home and added value here or consume those products here, we would add about $385 million to the economy of the farmer and rancher, and over $1 billion of impact to the state. That's been one of our highlights lately, is to look at opportunities to add value to what we produce.
There are some pending issues that are coming up. I would like you to tell me about the Food Safety Act.
Oh, you bet. The Food Safety Modernization Act was passed by Congress in 2011, signed into law by the President Obama. FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is in the process of rolling out the regulations. And farmers, the first one that's going to impact New Mexico is the produce safety rule. And the way that Congress passed the law and the way the FDA has promulgated the rules, states have an opportunity to either assume those regulatory duties on behalf of the state, or FDA would have to do that. The preference has been, and we went and met with our farmers and the folks who grow produce in the state, and we have significant produce: lettuce, cabbage, chilies, of course chilies, that would be impacted by this. The farmers were pretty much unanimous. They would rather that the State Department of Agriculture do those inspections in state. They know us, they can call us, we're a face in the community, a face in the state. So this year at the legislature, we introduced a bill to give the Department of Agriculture the authority to conduct those inspections and to work with FDA to do the produce inspections and any other regulations that come out of the Food Safety Modernization Act. Proud to say the bill passed with no opposition all the way through both houses, and no opposition from the governor's office. In fact, it was the governor's priority to have that happen. So
good.
So we'll be implementing those regulations over the next year, and the produce rule will go into effect January 1st, 2018.
The other one I'm really interested in is the organic farming and ranching bill. At the beginning, everyone said, no, it's too hard, no one will ever buy it. And now, is it still the fastest growing segment of New Mexico agriculture?
Organic continues to grow in the state of New Mexico and across the nation. It's very popular, and people really desire those products. New Mexico, the legislature shifted the organic program to the New Mexico Department of Agriculture in 2011. And since then, the program's been operating with a deficit. It's struggled. This year at the legislature, and we held meetings across the state, 7 different meetings across the state with the producers, and it was pretty well unanimous. They wanted to restructure the fee program. It's a fee-based program in New Mexico. The producers wanted to restructure that. They came to the legislature, introduced a bill to repeal the fee structure that was in statute and allow us to work with them to set up a fee structure that works for industry. We'll be promulgating those rules, and they'll go into effect probably around July 1st. And that will allow the State Department of Agriculture to better serve the organics. And I think we'll continue to see a great growth in that sector of the ag economy.
So just as there was great reluctance to embrace GMO organics, now people are talking about GMO, genetically modified organism. Is that on the horizon? Where does that stand in New Mexico?
It's all over the place. There's folks who are concerned and really they're trying to educate themselves about the genetically modified. Agriculture's been modifying their genetics since day one, with either the natural cross-pollination and hybridization of plants to get hybrid bigger and produce more yield off of the normal crops.
Or a drought-resistant chili.
Or a drought-resistant chili or that kind of thing. The question about GMO, it goes to how they do it, how the scientists and the seed folks are implanting these genes in a laboratory, and some people view that as artificial. There's been a lot of success across the world. I remember comments in the state legislature a few years ago about GMO and how one of the senators talked about how we wouldn't have a Vietnam as an example. The population of Vietnam was going hungry until they were able to introduce a genetically modified rice product that would actually grow in their climate and their soil. and they were hungry until that
Yeah.
happened. So there's a lot of positive benefits to that kind of hybridization, and there's a lot of speed. We're in agriculture and in the world, the population continues to grow, and we have to figure out as policymakers and as citizens of the world, essentially, how are we going to address the need and the desire for food
Yeah.
as resources, limited resources, land and water, continue to shrink.
Now let's go back to those policymakers, because we just finished the legislative session in Santa Fe, and there were a lot of very complex issues that came up. The hemp, tell our audience what hemp is, and we were hoping that we were going to be able to do some research, because it does seem suited to our climate and our water.
Right, Lorraine. Hemp was a product that was grown in the United States for the war effort, 20s and 30s and 40s, across the nation. It's the controversy today. I don't know if it's a controversy, but the fact is it's a relative to the normal marijuana plant. And in the United States, many years ago, the U.S. DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, and Congress designated hemp as marijuana and those kind of things as a Class 1 narcotic. And so if you go back into the early statistics of New Mexico, you'll see that we grew, my memory serves about, and my memory can sometimes be bad, about 8,000 acres of hemp was grown in New Mexico, in the early days. We haven't grown hemp since it's been as a Class 1 narcotic. In 2014, the Farm Bill, USDA Farm Bill, that impacts agriculture and all of us, they put a provision in there that said state departments of agriculture can work with research institutions and conduct research to see if hemp is a viable crop for their state. There's about 19 states that have taken up that offer. The controversy still is how does DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and all the other folks who enforce drug laws in the United States, how are they going to view that? In the 19 states, under the previous administration, they were pretty much left alone as long as they had a good regulatory framework, at the state level. We're still up in the air as to what the new administration, how their view of that is going to be. The Farm Bill expires in 2018, so we're in the process now of recrafting a new Farm Bill at the national level. So we'll see what that language is. In the legislature, we had a couple bills that were introduced, and the governor vetoed them. They went a little beyond what the Farm Bill would allow, which is why the veto occurred. But those bills are up in the air right now because of the message, no message,
and deadlines
and this and that. And so as a department, we are kind of a spectator at the moment, waiting to see if the Supreme Court's going to step in and say they're law or not law. The bottom line is someday, I think as a nation, this will have to be addressed. This is one of those topics that I think everybody agrees that hemp is not a narcotic, but it's still on the list. And so on a national scope, we're going to have to address it that way.
Are there other issues in the National Farm Bill that will affect New Mexico?
The Farm Bill really impacts New Mexico in a number of ways. We have the specialty crop block grant program that we get money from through USDA to each of the states. USDA gives each state a block grant based on the amount of specialty crops. Specialty crops are things like chili, onions, lettuce, anything but wheat, corn, and soybeans, for instance, or peanuts. They're covered by a different program. But that allows the states to really look at developing and enhancing markets and adding value in the specialty crop arena. And that's been a good program for New Mexico.
Tell me, who can qualify for the specialty crop?
So we work,
block grant.
Yeah, with that program, we work with. We prefer to work with groups. Individuals can apply for a block grant, but it can't be a program that only benefits that individual. It's got to be for the greater good. And so we end up getting a lot of proposals to do research, or they'll do a pilot crop kind of a concept, or they'll look at trying to look at new markets for existing crops. We've used that program with the chili growers to take green chili, and this is kind of a quasi-controversial thing. We've actually grown the market for fresh green chili to the entire nation. We're in over 3,200 supermarkets in August and September across the nation now. And why I say it's controversial is because I've had some New Mexicans say, "Quit sending our chili out of state."
Yeah.
and that causes some folks to say, "Hey, wait a minute, what are you doing?" But it's been a great program for the farmers, and you can see our green chili production has actually grown a little bit in the state. We're getting some acres back, but more than that, our farmers have gotten better, so our yields have increased.
We're speaking today with Jeff Witte, the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, also the Director of the New Mexico Department of Agriculture. There were a lot of other controversial things. One thing that came up in the legislature, I just want to ask you about. We have a long-standing chasm, a gulf between our urban citizens and our rural citizens. And I'm always looking for a way to build bridges. And one of the controversial areas was the coyotes, the predator killing contests. And that bill did not pass this time. And for the ranchers are so hardworking, and they have so much that's out of their control to deal with the weather but the city people, when they see a flatbed truck full of 500 coyote carcasses, they are horrified and say, "This is speciesism. You can't annihilate a species." So how can we bridge the gap? Of course, moderation is always the answer, but I would really wish that you can't be an environmentalist eating your hamburger and saying, "Let every coyote walk in peace." On the other hand, I mean, it's a two-sided.
It's a two-sided. There's so many facets to that rural-urban interface that we deal with.
Because it even comes up with water, too.
It comes up with water. It comes up with predators. It comes up with horses. It comes up with just about how you treat any animal out there. And you know, the other day, the new dean of the College of Agriculture, Rolando Flores, and I held a listening session in Portales and at the Ag Expo, and great turnout. And one of the things that came out of there from the folks who attended, and it was a listening session for us to hear, not for us to talk and everybody else to hear, but the ag producers have made a more of a point of emphasis is that they have to figure out how to better tell their story and have people understand. And when you get into the discussions of predator management, the folks in the city, they don't understand the pressures that they might see that the ranchers are feeling. You know, I grew up on a ranch. I have seen and we have experienced death loss of our calves, you know, and you take away a calf, and that's the rancher's paycheck. That's their income. That's their livelihood. And it would be no different than someone in town getting laid off for a week and losing their paycheck for a week. And I think when you start understanding that sensitivity of why the ranchers are so passionate about, they're never going to be able to control every predator out there. And I don't think anybody out there even has that desire. But at the same time, those bills tend to take away and the feeling of the ranching community is that it's starting to chip away at the toolbox of the options that they have to help preserve their paycheck, so to speak, and the livelihood.
And it may chip away at their toolbox, but it in some cases it can be an extinction issue, like for the wolves. You know, there might be one less wolf at some point in time. And I remember Governor Cargo, a Republican governor, but he considered himself a green. He was into conservation of all species and not choosing, you know, one or the other.
Right.
So,
and you know and it comes down to management. How do you manage these programs where you've taken species that have been and in the beginning it was the government who took the wolf out. And now it's the government that's bringing them back, right? And I've been in other states where wolf reintroduction programs have been successful, even to the point where they've been, in some cases, delisted or at least the listing has been reduced because of, and in those states, in those cases, many times they have much stronger communication and working relationships with the ranchers. a lot of times in New Mexico, we had the contrast between the federal government, pushing back. A rancher claims that a wolf may have depredated livestock, and it would take 6 or 8 months for a rancher maybe to get restitution for that.
Yeah.
And the battle became so much that it's just like, it's not worth putting up with all this stuff. I've been in other states where they had programs where they addressed that quite easily.
Yeah.
And
So
the
that's
ranchers and the
that's-
programs got it. So there has to be a good working relationship between the agencies. And as you know, in New Mexico, we've got a tremendous amount of federal land. And we've got a good amount of state land and a like amount of private property. I like to say we're a third, and it's not quite that simple, but you've got to have a good working relationship, and it can't be adversarial all the time, and a willingness to work together. And I think when that happens, you can see a reduction in the temperature. I call it reduction in the temperature
exactly.
of where people are.
Yeah. We just have 5 minutes left, so
It's been fast.
I know. You do a farm census every how often? 5 years?
So USDA does a farm census every 5 years, and the last census was 2012, and so this next census will be based on the 2017 calendar year. So in January of 2018, we'll start to see the farm census being mailed out to all the producers in the state of New Mexico. It's a great opportunity for the producers to tell their story. Data is, in today's society, data is where it's at. And the census provides an anonymous submission, but it really captures a picture. The last census, for instance, told us that we were the second oldest state in the nation, agriculturally. Our producers were 60.5 years of age or so. The only older state was Arizona, and so that really gives me the opportunity to do programming to get
That's
that next
what I want to
generation.
talk about, your AgriFuture program
AgriFuture.
every other year.
Every other
But
year.
It's so beautiful what you do. Please tell our
So
people.
so when I'm the most optimistic guy in agriculture, and I want to be joined by the next generation, and so we created the AgriFuture program to talk about and highlight the opportunities in production agriculture. There's tremendous opportunities. We're, like I said earlier, we're sending our food products to 44 different countries around the world, not just around the United States, but around the world. And we have an opportunity coming up. We're working with a major retailer, and they want to source a large portion of their produce annually from New Mexico. And so here's another opportunity for our agriculturalists to get in, and that buy local is going to be true. It's going to be buy local in our local supermarkets.
And you also pair young farmers and ranchers or people who are interested with seasoned hands.
We call it the mentor program.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity for folks that, there's a lot of kids that grew up on a farm or ranch who at some point may want to come back, or maybe they don't. And so then their parents, their grandparents, they may need to find someone else who's going to come in. And that mentorship program is a great opportunity for kids to learn from the best and the smartest.
And every other year, this year it's the Women in Agriculture Leadership Conference.
Yeah, and that's one we help sponsor and promote, the Women's Ag Leadership Conference. And I think the last time they do that every other year of our AgriFuture, but they had over 200 ladies come in and boy, I'm a firm believer that if you want to get it done, you go to the ladies, right?
Yeah.
and that conference has really taken off, and it provides a good catalyst for all that's good in New Mexico, especially with New Mexico agriculture.
Well, you've done a lot of fun things this year. One of the things you provide for the legislature is something called AgFest.
AgFest.
Where you feed everybody in the building the best barbecue, the best corn, the best...
Rotunda dinner. The legislators work hard. The staff works really hard.
Yeah.
Usually, the last 2 days of the session, we schedule the Rotunda dinner because the legislators tend to work all night, and we want them to eat good, and that's a good way to highlight once again all the local products that are produced in New Mexico, and it's another way of telling them thank you for their hard work. They're citizen legislators, and it's a great opportunity.
So, but not only do you feed us physically, but also spiritually and culturally. You do something called the Rounders Award based on Max Evans' wonderful book and movie.
You bet. Max is a good friend and longtime family friend, and the rounders, we hold it every October typically, and we'll recognize one or two people who live and articulate the Western way of life. And it's a great way to bring what I call the agriculture together.
Yes, yeah.
The culture of agriculture, and that reaches, from the person who maybe weaves the blanket, to makes the plaster, to sings the song, to writes the poem, to paints the picture, to does the sculpting. There's so much culture in agriculture in New Mexico. It's a great event.
So you've done painters like Gary Morton and journalists like Ollie Reed, and of course Max himself.
Max was the first rounder. Who better than to be the first rounder? But probably the most fun I've had, and I've had a great time with all the rounders. But when we gave it to Pat Evans for all the work, and Max, and as Max will tell you, he'd be nothing without Pat.
Yes.
But she did a lot of the editing. She does the proofing. She also does the illustration. In a lot
she's
of his
a wonderful
books.
artist.
And boy, everybody was so pleased when we gave her the award.
Yeah.
So deserving.
Yeah. But I love focusing on the culture part of agriculture. So you really cover from alpha to omega, everything. It always dawns on me once we start talking how much we have, how much I have to learn from you. So it's springtime. You've got 30 seconds. What should we look for? What is in this season of new beginnings?
Lorraine, we've got New Mexico. I always tell people, if you want to be a cabinet secretary, you want to be me. I've got the greatest job in New Mexico. But in the spring, I always look forward to the crop years and the plantings, and it looks like we're going to have a decent weather year going in the moisture. So I look forward to seeing the calves out in the landscape and the crops in the field, the chili growing, the onions growing. You see that already. And then I look at that new crop of kids that are coming out of to that next generation. So lots of good things happening in New Mexico.
Well, thank you so much. Our guest today is Jeff Witte, the Cabinet Secretary and Director of the New Mexico Department of Agriculture. We have to do this every year.
I would enjoy it. I love being here with you. Thank you.
I love it too. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank you, our audience, for being with us today on Report from Santa Fe. I'm Lorraine Mills, and we'll see you next week.
Past archival programs of Report from Santa Fe are available at the website reportfromsantafe.com. If you have questions or comments, please email info@reportfromsantafe.com. Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.